Okay, so we're here today. This is actually a pretty special episode. I'm here with my good buddy Anton, who is a he's crypto enthusiast, so on and so forth, and he is from Russia. So with all what's going on right now with Russia, Ukraine, and all that, I think it's good to get somebody's point of view who's actually from Russia, just to give his view, because I think a lot of our news is somewhat biased. So I wanted to be able to speak to somebody who's going to fill everybody in on an actual Russian perspective. So Anton, it's nice to see you. What do you have to say for yourself?
Hey Neil, it's been a while. Oh, there's lots to say. If you get deep inside the conflict, it's a much bigger conflict than a lot of people wanna. Oh, then it's bigger than what people understand it is, and it's probably a lot bigger than the news is showing it to be. Right?
In what way? Like, when you're saying it's bigger, do you mean like it could turn into a world war? Do you think it's like, what do you mean bigger is in like ideologically bigger? Like how what do you mean by bigger?
So, first of all, let's name things the way they are. This is World War III. That's the way we see it. Number one advice that I can give is always follow the money. A person like you with a financial background can understand and actually decipher events that are happening if you can see it from the point of view of money. Now, not just money for the purpose of wealth, it's money for the purpose of power, influence, whatever the money can buy for you, right? And in order to understand the financial component of it, look back at the history of gold, the history of creation of the American dollar, Bretton Woods of 1971, and even Bitcoin. Many of these things will answer the question, but reality is you can't understand this crisis without reading books.
Yes.
It's not just what's in the news. It's you need to read history books, financial books, and that's the only way to understand what's going on. Plus, you need to know geographically specific things like history between Ukraine and Russia. What is happening over there?
Well, you see, I was listening to this one woman because I never understood like why Ukraine. Like, why does everybody always want Ukraine? It's always, it seems to always be a place of contention, has been for some time. And I saw this one woman on YouTube. She was from India, and she probably shed more light on it than I ever understood. And what she was saying, and again, I don't know, like, the reason why I would believe her, because she doesn't have a dog in the fight. You know what I mean? She's not from Europe. So to me, it looked like she was looking at it from a totally unbiased point of view. And what she said was, she goes, and I never understood this about Ukraine, but she said that like years ago, this is like you're saying, you got to read history. It's not just something that happens overnight. And she said, the reason why like the Ukrainians have like a beef with the Russians is because when Stalin was in, he executed a lot of Ukrainians and he transplanted a lot of Russians because he wanted like if a certain type of people identify as another type of people, that's how you take them over. And she said basically he transplanted all these Russians in the Ukraine like years ago, 80, 90 years ago, whatever it was. And she goes, a lot of those Ukrainians have never forgotten this because it was almost like a genocide sort of a thing. This is what she said. Now, I don't know if this is true or not true. I'm just going by what she said. So she said that that's a major source of contention is because the Russians are basically saying, well, it's ours because so many of these Russians are identifying as Russian. I mean, these Ukrainians are identifying as Russian. But she said that would be similar to like somebody saying, oh, India belongs to Britain because it was a colony at one time. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, they kind of took something that wasn't theirs. Now they want it back. You know what I mean? Sort of a thing.
Yeah. So what she's saying is actually more of what you will hear locally here.
Oh, okay.
This is not exactly accurate information, of course. If you look back at history, and let's make sure we are clear on this. Russia is actually a major civilization. It's beyond a nationality. It is a major Eurasian player that is a source of culture,
Okay.
language, music, and other things. And of course, it attracts other smaller countries to it because they cannot make it on their own.
Yeah, yeah. So they kind of like borrowed a lot of their culture from Russia, much like how Canada borrows from the States. You know what I mean? Like,
Actually, yeah, like Canada borrows from England.
well, from England too, but I'm just saying, like, if you look at most Canadians, right, what do they do on the weekend? They watch NFL football. They watch American television. You know what I mean? Like a lot of what we have in our daily life in Canada is it's transplanted from the United States.
It's true, but you gotta look a little deeper. So if you're looking on a cultural level, Canada is pretty much a Latin country with your holidays like Christmas.
Yeah.
We all celebrate the same thing here in Canada. We all speak the same English language. It defines who we are at the end of the day, right? Russia is similar. So you can say that a major player is Britain.
Yes.
Look at how many colonies they have. In that sense, Britain, just by itself, even though it's a small country, it's a civilization.
Yeah.
There's a lot of places that speak the same language. There's a lot of places that share that same religion, holidays, whatever. That's how deep it goes, right?
Yeah.
Russia is the same way. And then there's China, of course, which is
totally different than everybody else.
Different.
Yeah,
You cannot even compare the three, right? And so if you look at Russia, and I'll give you a good example, it was so vast at one point in time. And you got to remember that this is an over 1,000-year-old country, right? In comparison, States is 350 years old and Canada is 150, right? So Russia is over 1,000. Ukraine was like a province of Russia. This is the way you got to look at it. So if you live in United States and you have Florida, Texas, and California, they're not Californians, they're not Floridians, they're Americans.
Yeah.
So if let's say there's ever a cataclysmic event that causes collapse of your country economically or into multiple different countries where states start declaring independence, let's say the recession or depression is so bad that Florida goes
like you always hear of Texas saying they want to split.
That's
right?
So let's say this happens. You're not going to call Texans.
Yeah.
You still think that they're Americans,
American, yeah.
right? Same with Ukrainians. It's separated, but you got to understand, only 100 years ago, it was created in its current borders by the Russian Empire.
Okay, so you're saying, no, I just wanted, because again, I'm not really clear on this, so I just want to know for my own sake and for the people listening. So you're saying from day one, the Ukraine was basically like a province or whatever of Russia.
Correct.
Because they were saying they were different.
They are different. You got to look even further back if you want to know how different they are. And the reason they're different is because they actually have a mix of Polish. Now, Polish and Russians are both Slavic nationalities.
So would you say Poland has its own like culture, like is its own, or is that still like a derivative of Russia?
Poland would belong to Slavic.
Oh, okay.
Right? But the interesting thing about Poland is that they actually chose Catholic religion. This is where the separation begins. Russia chose Greek or Orthodox.
Yeah.
And those two, whatever was happening back 1,000 years ago, 700 years ago, has separated those two Slavic nationalities, Polish and Russian.
Oh.
Then Polish started using the Latin letters in their alphabet, right? Now, because of the separation, purely religious separation, there was a 700-year war between Poland and Russia over the territory of modern Ukraine.
Okay.
So it kept going back and forth, Russia, Poland, and the language eventually, the way you see it being written, looks like it's Russian. But the way you pronounce it, it kind of sounds like Polish.
Oh, really?
That's correct.
So you can actually come to the conclusion just by pure, like what you're saying, just how it's spelled and spoken shows the relationship between how a Ukrainian is both Polish and Russian at the same time.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
If you actually,
that's pretty interesting.
If you actually live in Ukraine, you'd probably understand what, well, not everything, but mostly what Polish people are saying.
Really?
And then you'd also understand what Russian people are saying. But Polish and Russian cannot understand each other.
Really? That's weird, eh?
You know what I mean? Yeah. So,
but can you, like you as a Russian though, can you understand Ukrainian?
No, just some letters.
Oh, okay.
Just some letters. No, not a whole lot. Sorry, letters. I mean words.
Oh, okay.
Some
Yeah,
words.
yeah.
Of course, because we're so intertwined. If you ask Russian and Ukrainian, so if you let's say you're Russian who lives in Ukraine,
Okay.
you'd call yourself Ukrainian. If you are a Ukrainian that lives in Russia, you'd call yourself a Russian. But that's how we grew up. There was
Okay.
no difference. Ukrainians and Russians are
Like,
one.
would you have any Ukrainian in your family that you know of?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So it's like
25%.
Oh, okay. So it's
Yeah.
basically, it's pretty much, it's like almost like, like in Canada, French Canadians, you probably have somebody who's French in your family somewhere.
I'll tell you more. My wife is Ukrainian, and so my entire half of family is Ukrainian.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
My child is half Ukrainian,
Yeah.
half Russian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So what does your wife call herself though? Ukrainian or Russian?
She calls herself Ukrainian. Yeah,
But is she from the Ukraine?
she is.
Oh, okay. So you didn't know her from over there.
No,
Okay. You
Oh,
met
we
her over here.
Yeah, in
Oh,
Canada,
okay. All right.
yeah. And so in that, if you look at it this way, you would look at it as if Texas is separating from states.
Okay.
This is Ukraine separating from Russia. They didn't become Ukrainians because of that, they are Ukrainians as a nationality, but to you, they're still your people. They're still
Okay.
the same, right? Just like if Texas separated, Americans would still call them Americans.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, now imagine the scenario: something happens, a cataclysmic event in the United States. Florida separates. Then Florida says, "You know what? I kind of like Russia," and so they sign a deal, and Russia starts bringing weapons. Is that you think that would be allowed by the United States that's right next to it? They'd say absolutely not. The Russia would start signing agreements. Oligarchs would go in. They start buying up companies, right? Now you created a tension right on the border, right? This is what's happening between NATO and Russia right now.
Well, see, I hate to cut you off about that because I'm just getting my information from people from YouTube and whatnot, and I saw a Russian guy. He was saying, he goes, "You don't understand what's going on." He goes, "Everyone's like making Putin out to be this warmonger trying to take, Ukraine, so on and so forth." He goes, "What it's really about is NATO keeps moving closer and closer and closer to Russia, and he's basically saying, we don't want you here." Is that true?
Basically, in brief explanation, yes, that's how it is. Now, this is to understand really what's happening. We got to look at the world as not 200 plus individual independent countries. Well, we got to look at the world as major blocks, civilizations. And you cannot even count them on your both hands, how many are left.
Yeah.
Russia is one of them. China is one of them.
So you don't think
India
like
is
there's
one of them.
any sort of collaboration with China and Russia for this?
No, of course there is.
Yeah.
But that would be more of an alliance, right? So what I'm saying is all those countries in Europe, all the small ones, all the players, even Ukraine, they are not, and they cannot ever be independent. They either belong to United States NATO bloc, maybe Turkish,
Oh, okay.
who also has ambitions in the Muslim world,
Yeah.
or Russian bloc. But historically, it's the Russian bloc because it's the same.
So
bloc.
are you
Right.
basically saying like Russia's afraid to lose Ukraine to the NATO bloc or the Turkish bloc? Is that what the issue is? And they're trying to solidify that it stays with them? Is that what it is?
So that would be more or less an accurate statement. NATO is already there. Ever since the revolution of 2014, you can even look at people like Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son.
Yeah.
He's already on the board of an oil company. They're basically sucking the resources out of it.
Yeah.
And then using Ukraine as means to fight Russia, right? So Ukraine by itself is not an independent player.
But how did they get to that point? Like, why didn't Russia, when Hunter Biden and all them went into Russia to basically rape it, why didn't Putin say anything back then?
Because Russia was not strong enough. So if we look back at 1991 when Soviet Union collapsed, for the next 7 years, it was being robbed of its resources and becoming ever weaker up until the point of 1998.
And from an historical point of view, that's not really that long ago.
No, it's actually
like, it's amazing how much they built up in that time.
It's in our lifetime.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If you look,
I was in university when that happened.
Yeah, and I was in high school. So by 1998, Russian GDP has reached its ever lowest point of like
in 1998.
1998, even though the collapse was in 1991.
Yeah, it takes a few years to filter through and everything.
Yeah, so companies were being robbed literally by oligarchs.
Yeah.
Who are the oligarchs? They're either military or whoever has muscle.
Yeah.
Or former government people. Now,
and again, I hate to cut you off, but just for like the listeners out there that don't understand the oligarchs, from what I understand, and I've heard this from other Russians, was that they said that the oligarchs essentially what happened was because Russia was a Soviet system, they had quotas on everything, right? So they would only be allowed to make so much, steel, so much, bread, so much, whatever they could make, they could only make so much. So what happened when it collapsed, there was like giant steel mills like the size of Dofasco and Stelco that were just abandoned because the Soviet Union is no longer a country. So a lot of these oligarchs, like they're just regular dudes. They just took over the steel plant and they would say, yeah, it belongs to me now. And if anybody got in their way, they'd shoot you or they beat you up, whatever the case may be. So what they started doing was because they kept all the people that knew how to make the steel, and all the people who made the steel. And I know this for a fact with the steel industry, because they needed income because everybody was broke because they used to get money from the Soviet government. Now you're getting nothing. So they were making steel. That's why steel fell dramatically in the 90s is because they're in the early 2000s is because they were pumping it all out on the market. It was Russian steel because they were making it for next to nothing because these oligarchs were taking over these like steel refineries and they were pumping it out into the world market. That's why like Stelco, Dofasco, all those U.S. steel, that's why they had such a hard time to make any money because it was that the market was being flooded by these oligarchs running these Russian steel mills. And so anyways, these guys eventually became extremely rich. So they were basically like they took over these giant corporations for nothing. Like they just stole them basically, right?
that's right. So a lot of those people became billionaires
overnight.
Now, so you hear about some of them here, living in Canada, States, in England. The reason is because it used to be considered a safe haven.
Yeah.
A safe haven for your money would be to buy an American dollar or and a British sterling pound, put it in their stock market in one of those growing tech companies.
Yeah, and they just pump and dump.
And it just ever keeps growing, right?
Yeah.
And then if you look at government bonds or securities released by the United States, those were supposed to be as safe as possible.
Cash. Yeah.
Impossible to ever be prone to recessions, deficits, collapses, anything, right?
Yeah.
Now, what you're seeing today is the complete opposite. Now, with people understanding that the United States doesn't have a limit on printing of their money and inability to back it up with proper production, because most of the production is in China right now, they are starting to back it up with selling it to foreign debt. It's a foreign debt, right? So China buys it, then it makes stuff outside of U.S., and that's how you back up your dollar, right? Also, you back up your dollar by going into oil wars. So that's why we see a lot of those conflicts in the Middle East.
As they call the petrodollar.
That's right. Yeah. So a petrodollar is actually a very big deal. If you lose that, status of a petrodollar, you lose pretty much 1/3 of the U.S. economy, and then the world can switch to another currency. Now, this leads me to conclusion that this current war is actually the currency war. What we're seeing is, I don't know what you want to call it. It's probably a monetary order shift, but basically the idea is that the US dollar is losing ground, and most likely there will be 2-3 different currencies that are going to emerge to replace it. Now, if we look back in history, this happened before. So, for example, if we look at 1933, when they started taking gold away from the American citizens, confiscations, right? The reason for that was because the American dollar was backed by gold. Now, in the time of depression, which was 1930s, there was not enough money to go around. So United States banks, they found a way around it. They confiscated the gold, and they said that they will pay citizens whatever gold they have, about $25 an ounce. Now they will be allowed to buy that same gold back at $45 an ounce. $45 an ounce. Don't quote me on the numbers.
But somewhere around there.
But basically, that's the idea. You take something, and then you increase the value of it. So this way you can print more dollars, right? So that's what allowed them to do it. Now, the reason they separated the American dollar from gold in 1971, Bretton Woods Agreement, you know about that one, right? The reason is because it gave them the ability to print money unlimited, in unlimited amounts. It was no longer tied to gold, and you could back it up just by the American dollar, by the power of it, enforced by the American military, and in terms of production, that would be a petrodollar. Yeah. So there's your backup military, and it all kind of ties together.
And like you're saying about looking at it from a historical point of view, it's very, like, I see so many parallels, and a lot of people quote this book. There was a famous book written called Fiat Money Inflation of France. And a lot of people don't realize that the French Revolution was all about fiat currency. They have no idea. Like, people, it was Marie Antoinette, and no. It was about fiat currency, because that was the first major attempt by a Western powerhouse, because France at the time was a powerhouse. It's still relatively strong now. But I'm saying back then they were like a world power. It was the first time that a world power, Western world power, because China had paper money before, but they wanted to go over to paper currency. And people say, well, why did they want to go to paper currency? The reason why, and again, you got to look at it from a very long-term point of view, was because of the Industrial Revolution. What happened was England was like essentially like the United States back then. Like, they were, they controlled the ocean, with their navy and yada, yada, yada.
That's right. They called it the Queen of Seas.
Yeah, they were huge, right? They were the superpower. So anyways, but England was the first to really start major commercial banking the way we know it. You know what I mean? And just like that, what happened in 2008 with the whole real estate crisis, what happened during the Industrial Revolution was England found out, okay, instead of, because what used to happen in the old days was everybody made their own clothes. Everybody made their own beer. They made their own everything. Like, everybody did everything themselves. Then what happened is the whole idea of the assembly line, factories making everything. So you get a job. Like, nobody had a job before the Industrial Revolution. Like, you worked for yourself. You were a butcher, baker, candlestick maker, whatever it was. And you'd barter, and you'd go to a town, and if you made, say you had chickens, you trade chickens for whatever, wheat, whatever. But when the Industrial Revolution came out, people actually had a job. That's where the idea of wages came out, right? So anyways, so what happened was in England, they started figuring out that if you had a factory, you could make an enormous amount of money, right? So who owned the factories? And this is like the whole illusion of, self-made people. The people who had the land were the title landowners, like guys who were dukes and all that. They had these huge farms. So they'd come in, they say, okay, you got that farm. How about we build a factory on it? Well, what's a factory? Well, we make this and you blah, blah, blah. So one guy would do it. The bank would loan you the money and they would teach you how to run it. Like, okay, we're going to, because they want it to work so you can pay them back, right? So this started taking off. That's when credit really started getting huge. But it's like anything. They kind of saturated the British market. So what happened is the British bankers said, it's not that big of a country. We've built as many factories. So then they went to France. And they started the exact same thing in France. They started saying, oh, okay, you own 200 acres? We'll build a factory here. We're going to make plates. We're going to make knives, we're going to make whatever. And France started taking off. Well, who was the biggest landowner? The King of England. The King of France. So they went to the King of France, Louis XVI, and they said, we're going to loan you all this money to make factories and all that. But what did the idiot do? He took the money and he built Versailles, built this giant palace, right? Just like, the idiots you see today, their house goes up in value. And what do? They get a line of credit.
Yeah.
I paid $200,000 for my house. Now it's worth $1 million. I'm going to take $800,000 line of credit and go out and buy, a cottage, a boat, a yacht, all this shit.
Lambo.
Yeah, Lambo, all this stuff. Basically, that's what Louis XVI was. He in England started saying, you know what? We gave this guy, like, in today's money, it'd be billions of dollars. We gave him all this money. He's not going to pay it back. And that's why they were having those big parties. They're doing all this shit. He was just blowing borrowed money. So France got to the conclusion. They said, you know what? We can't pay this back. So I got a better idea. This is what we're going to do. We're going to make paper money. And then we'll pay England back with this paper money. But guess what? England didn't want it. that's where the War of 1812 and all that shit. But people don't understand this. They don't understand that all this happened. And did you know the major reason why people got their head cut off in France with the guillotine was because they were using gold. People don't understand that. They outlawed gold, and they said you can only use French paper money. And if you were ever caught using gold, you got your head cut off. I'm not saying it's going to get to that point now, but I'm saying you can see the parallels of how currency manipulation can cause major problems.
Actually, that's a good point. And going back to the beginning of our conversation, when you mentioned about Russians and starvation of Ukrainians, they call it Golodomor back over there. Reality is that was World War I, World War II, two revolutions. All this stuff was happening in Russia. I know because my great grandma, who used to live in those times, she actually witnessed.
She would have been
Emperor
there.
of Russia. She was still there when the emperor. Was there, right?
So Peter was his name, right? No, it was Nicholas.
Nicholas,
was it? Yeah.
So back in those hard times, the reason Golodomor happened is because the West was selling Russia equipment for the Russian Industrial Revolution.
Oh.
Instead of taking gold, they decided to take it in wheat.
Oh.
Wheat.
Oh, so there was no wheat left for the Ukrainians.
For everyone.
Oh.
People think that it's just Ukrainians because a lot of this land that is in Ukraine is very fertile. That's where a lot of this stuff grows. If you look at what's happening today, and they're saying that they're banning wheat from Russia and Ukraine, that's 30% of world wheat altogether, right? 10% comes from Ukraine, 20% from Russia, because the land is very fertile for that type of wheat. And so it's exactly
that's why Hitler wanted it.
Yeah.
It was called the bed basket of Europe.
Of Europe, correct. So if you look at Russia, there was exactly the same amount of people dying from starvation as in Ukraine.
Oh, okay.
And it's not Golodomor, it's the needs of the country. You're facing two scenarios. Some people may starve, not necessarily die.
Yeah.
They're just starving. It's hard.
Yeah.
They can make it, but it's very hard.
Kind of like the Irish with the potato famine. Like they you know what I mean? It was decimating to them.
Yeah. So two scenarios. On one side, starvation. On the other side, if you don't industrialize in time, you will be annihilated by the Nazi regime in World War II, which was already coming.
Oh yeah.
Everybody knows.
It was years in it. Yeah.
Hitler was planning it. You don't just build machinery, tanks, and weapons, and nobody notices. Plus, there's people sponsoring the business, right? So I guess the Soviet leadership at the time made a decision to buy the machinery needed to manufacture tanks and industrialize the country, and they would pay wheat for it. They had no choice. In my opinion, they had no choice. They had three new economic policies. They're called NEP.
But and who was getting the wheat? You're saying England, was it? Or like
it was the European countries that were making the machines.
Okay. So it'd probably be Germany and right. All of them.
Actually, I don't know about that. I don't know which countries were selling that. A lot of times, if you look at engineering, that would be England, it would be Germany. Those are pretty
those are probably the most industrial
established industrial places, and also the United States. It's actually because it's separate on a separate continent. The war never touched it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. There was never bombing, so they could build whatever machinery they wanted. Actually, they did give some of the machinery to Soviet Union during the Lend-Lease.
Oh yeah, it's during World War One. Right? Yeah,
it's not like it's a loan. Still, you gotta pay back for it, but it's very minimal payments because it's the times of war. Yeah. Actually, Lend-Lease was the thing that kickstarted the American economy out of the Depression back then, right? Anyways, so that's the situation with gold. Gold can be manipulated. Now, if you look at gold today, and they're putting all these sanctions on Russia, what's happening is Russia can use all these reserves that they were buying for many years. However, if you decide...
But Russia must be, Russia must be rich with gold. They must have a lot like that.
So basically...
Just by virtue of the size of it, right?
Russia is one of the major holders of gold, right? But here's the thing with gold. It can be sanctioned as well.
Yeah.
How do you sell gold? You sell it on most likely British
market.
gold exchange.
They manipulate the price every day.
British gold exchange.
Yeah.
Now, even if you don't manipulate it, even if even if it's just
you got to go through them.
Even if it's just a spot market, they can manipulate the conditions. So they can decide the quota, how much gold they can accept. They can decide how much tax you got to pay, duties, whatever.
They can also say, we think you obtained it illegally, so we're not taking it, whatever, right?
They make the rules, right?
Yeah.
So if they want to tax gold on
90% or
95%, good luck selling that, right?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to buy your gold.
Yeah.
So in that way, I want to tell you something. Maybe it's a little bit off topic, but I want to touch base on Bitcoin a little bit because there's a little bit of debate online whether Russia can avoid sanctions using cryptocurrencies. Now, we see what's happening with cryptocurrencies based just on the Freedom Convoy that was happening in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Assets were frozen. Bitcoin holders were located. Whoever donated, they found them.
Really?
It was released online. Every donation made, it's all public. Everybody knows who's who. And the Bitcoin wallets were frozen as well, right? Now, that means they can already censor Bitcoin.
Yeah. So it's not as stealthy as they try to make it out to be.
That's right. So on top of that, let's say you decide to cash out on Bitcoin. What if they charge you tax at 95%?
Yeah.
Just like they can do with gold.
Yeah.
Exactly the same reason why Bitcoin is not censorship free as we think it is.
That we thought it originally was.
And that's why Russia is not going to use it to avoid sanctions because it knows it. On top of that, I'll tell you more. People that think that Bitcoin is digital gold got to ask themselves a question. Can you ban gold altogether from purchasing and selling? Not really. It's just everybody's buying it. Everybody's selling it. Can you, do you know a country that banned Bitcoin? I do. It's China.
Yeah.
Now, if one country refuses to deal with it,
I think India did too, didn't they?
No, they're going to be regulated. But if one country is already banned it, that means it's no longer means of common exchange like they thought it would be. It's no longer gold 2.0. It just can't be. One country is completely out. That country has 1.5 billion people in it.
Yeah, like a quarter of the world's population.
So Bitcoin is most likely going to be the North American thing, or maybe the Western thing. Russia's central bank came out and said, just before the war, they said that they are planning on banning it.
Banning Bitcoin.
Yeah, they're planning on banning Bitcoin. That's their recommendation from central bank. Now, don't confuse Central Bank of Russia with the government of Russia, right?
Okay.
Those can have different opinions. Same
like with the Bank of Canada and Canadian.
That's right. And so the same thing with the Bank of India.
Okay.
India's government, they want to ban it. But there are people inside India that don't want to ban it. Good example is Shiba. Shiba coin is very popular in India. In fact, it's probably number one in India, right? So you're having this
you gotta love that Shiba. I'm glad any country that has over 1 billion people, I'm glad they like it.
So you gotta look at Bitcoin and ask yourself a question. Now, could it be that Bitcoin was invented as the next thing to replace the American dollar and create this common currency that would stretch the American power even further? Now, is that possible at all? I think it is. The reason is because its rules of engagement about Bitcoin is 100% created and regulated in the United States. Now, whatever these exchanges are doing, all these so-called independent exchanges,
so-called, yeah.
As soon as the American government says you cannot deal with Russia, they're banning all those oligarchs. Whoever.
That's another thing. I heard those.
Sanctioned.
Did you hear about all those oligarchs? Their yachts are being seized. They have these like giant yachts, right? And another thing, like they're really going after those oligarchs, right? Which I find kind of interesting because I always found like Putin was at odds with a lot of them. He didn't get along with a lot of them, but it seems that this whole Russian conflict, it's really resulting in this the EU going after the oligarchs. They're not even allowing those guys to buy insurance for these yachts, and these yachts are worth like $200-300 million. They're massive. You can fit 1,000 people on them. They're seizing them, and the ones that aren't seized, not allowed to. No company's allowed to give them an insurance policy.
That's correct. The thing about oligarchs and Putin, and this is despite the common belief in the West. Imagine you run a country that has collapsed. Okay, it has resources running in every direction away. Imagine it's in large amounts, like whatever the oligarchs are taking, and instead of just becoming rich and staying, they take it to England.
Yeah. So it's a double whammy. You're taking the resources and you're taking the wealth, like you're taking the money.
That's right. And you're buying Chelsea.
Yeah.
And England, an English soccer club. You storing your money there. You're buying English stocks. What do you mean to Putin? Literally, what do you mean to Putin? A traitor.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
So you sanction.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So why is the EU going after these guys if they're sinking their money, like you're saying? And I totally agree with you. If they're sinking their money in Europe and Toronto real estate, I remember speaking to a Russian guy. He said, I don't know the exact percentage, huge percentage of the real estate, spike is because of Russian money. Huge part. I don't know. I'm not going to say all of it. A lot. And anyway, so why would the EU, knowing that these guys are bringing so much money into the European Union economy, why are they going after them? I could see Putin hating them, but why do they hate them?
I can answer that actually, but before I answer that, I'll tell you more. This is a precedent. If you start banning money that is incoming to your country from whatever source, if it's billions of dollars, you're creating a precedent for everyone else who is rich
to not want to go there,
to never trust you.
That's again. What I'm saying.
They will never bring the money to your country.
That's why everybody liked Switzerland for years, was because they had these impenetrable banks. That eventually came down. Like then eventually governments were able to penetrate, the security system. But the reason why everybody, you always heard in movies, a Swiss bank account. The reason why the mega rich went there was because nobody could get past their security, right? And that's, like you said, that's why all that money flocked to Switzerland back in the day. Ireland, believe it or not, was one of them fairly recently. But like you're saying, this is what I'm saying. Isn't Europe shooting themselves in the foot by going after these oligarchs?
No. So Europe is actually, all of these decisions, they have impact. They're very smart. A lot of them are calculated, right? Here's the thing. So there's oligarchs on both sides. There's ones that stayed in Russia. There's ones that are outside. There's been a couple of events that Putin did that changed how the oligarchs interact with money inside Russia and outside of Russia. One thing was he actually offered them a deal when he first became the president. He offered them a deal. You can stay in Russia, become a government employee sort of thing, whatever, in charge of an oil company. We're not going to take your money, pay your taxes, employ the people, obey the law, and nobody's going to touch you. A lot of the oligarchs actually took that deal. And now,
really? Okay.
And now you see them in the government. They're rich. They're not ultra rich like Abramovich.
Yeah.
But they're rich enough not to ever need anything.
But would you say on average that the ones that didn't take that deal became richer?
That's right. They became richer because they started buying tech companies. However, now we see how much risk they took. Now all of their wealth is getting taken away.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it on YouTube. Like, they've showed mansions that the guys just fled. They left them. Like, these are, like, mansions beyond belief. I'm talking 50, 60,000 square feet with helicopter pads, and the guy is nowhere to be found.
That's right. So now they're basically left with whatever they could carry.
Yeah, that's what they were doing. The guy, it showed one of them walking out with some paintings, and he's taken off, and there was a plane waiting for him. So I guess he was taking the most valuable stuff he had, but he had to get the hell out of there. And you ever see those guys that call themselves urban explorers?
Yeah.
They go into, like, they're walking through one of these guys' houses. I don't know where it is in Europe, but it's unbelievable. Like, it's beyond belief big. Like, it's all ornate with,
Yeah.
You know how it is, right?
So then in 2014, when this revolution happened in Ukraine, right? Well, by the way, they're called color revolutions, right? So this was an orange revolution. The president was gone. Ukraine finally decided to side with NATO against Russia, right? And that's where the tides started changing. Things started changing. You see the beginning of that conflict between NATO and Russia going really hot. That's the point of takeoff. Now we're at the hottest point. But that's where was the beginning. Anyway, so in 2014, Putin actually offered these other oligarchs. He said, we will create a program called capital forgiveness.
Oh, okay.
And so he offered them, if you bring the money back right now,
No tax or
we
something.
will not question how you obtained it.
Okay, all right.
You could have, back in the day, walked away with money from Russia illegally. You took them offshore, you lived your life, that's fine. If you decide to come back and invest in Russian economy, do the same deal like we offered to those other people. Obey the law, employ people, help the economy.
Yeah, okay.
We will not
Clean
question.
slate.
We will not question.
Yeah.
Right? This is the deal. It's open for a limited amount of time, limited period of time. And some oligarchs took the deal. They went back to Russia.
I think that would have been the best deal because you made most of your money and then you come back even richer.
That's right. So it was a pretty good deal. People that are there, the oligarchs that are there, they're actually well off.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, it's not like it's the Soviet Union anymore. Like there's still a lot of like free market in Russia.
That's right. So some of these oligarchs, like Abramovich, he decided to take a risk. He decided that maybe it's going to be okay, even though in 2014 England already started investigating the sources of his income and looking into his visa.
Okay.
Right? Now, he should have just took
Putin's deal.
He should have took the deal.
Yeah.
Because he would have been probably the governor of one of the provinces of Russia.
He would definitely have been an extremely powerful, well-off guy in Russia. Plus have the protection of Russia.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Now, why are they pushing all these oligarchs now, right? The reason is because oligarch is a powerful figure. It has they have a lot of followers, they have a lot of resources, they have connections.
So do you think they're just trying to just take their shit now? Like, do you think
oligarchs?
No, I mean EU. Are they like, okay, these guys don't have the okay, they've already like passed up 2 deals with Putin. They're not in with the Russians anymore just because they're not going back. They're here. They have all the stuff. There's a conflict starting. This is our chance to take all their stuff. Is it as simple as that?
No, it's not just about the money. Now, if we think that our leaders in power are only chasing the money, then what we're seeing in them is what we're after. We want
no, not so much saying right? Just money. It's more like resources. You know what I mean? Like if these guys are controlling technology and no.
The reason for that is actually so they would pressure Putin from the inside.
Oh,
now,
okay.
If we're talking about war, and the reason I call this World War III is not the reason for that is not because there's a conflict on the ground. The conflict on the ground is not between NATO and Russia, but everything else, every other conflict, ideological, monetary conflict, psychological, philosophical, it is direct conflict. This is war to extinction. So United States is basically, in terms of finances, dropping nuclear bombs on Russia right now. Any other country would have collapsed easily. 1 week and the oligarchs would have caved in and they would topple the government. That is the idea. They want to topple the government. Some of these oligarchs have business in Russia, but they also sell outside.
Yeah.
They could be selling whatever.
It doesn't have to be illegal. It could just be like, again, wheat, could be steel, could be anything.
It is. So it is factories,
oil,
IT companies, whatever, production, right? Now, they're losing money. So the governments of NATO, they want to pressure those oligarchs. But at the same time, they're making a mistake of seizing other oligarchs' money. Now, the only loyalty, so they expect these oligarchs to trust them because they're saying that if you pressure Putin, we will give the money back to you. Your own money will return. Aren't you happy about that? And guess what? They're not. They would rather stay there in Russia and be protected because whoever's loyal to Putin is always protected. Because if you look back from 2007, every speech that Putin ever said, he did exactly what he ever said he would do. He kept every promise. There was never a broken promise to anyone, right? So that creates trust. They follow through on every contract. Even if there's a conflict, they still supply gas to Europe. The only reason there's limited gas to Europe right now is because Europe is declining that gas.
Yeah, it's almost like an artificial. To me, what it looks like is they're trying to turn like the Western population against Russia. And how do you do that? Look at these ridiculous oil prices right now, right? So they're going to say, see, because of Putin, you're paying at the pumps. Like it's more like it's ingrained in your mind to try to turn, like when you start hearing Google and Microsoft saying that, and Facebook saying it's okay to say hate speech against Russians. Give me a break. Like I can't believe that. Like you can say whatever you want as long as it's a Russian person. But anybody else, you're not allowed to say it against. If that's not a target,
that's propaganda, right? So if we look at history of propaganda, I want to ask you this one question. And because you live in the West, you'll know exactly what I mean. Have you ever heard anything good about Russia?
I personally have, not through the media, but through people I know.
If you watch local media, it's pretty much always bad news. It's almost like Russians are eating each other over there.
No, but it's not just that. They always make them out to be like they're backwards. Like they got old technology. Like I remember they're just showing something on the news the other day. They're showing the Russian army, and they showed all this like beat up equipment, and it's going down the road and it's like barely working, right? And they always try to make the Russians look like they're backwards, that they don't know what they're doing. But the only reason why I can say I've heard positive things, because I worked as an advisor to people that were in the oil industry, and most of those guys in the oil industry at some point in time have been to Russia. Like most of them, like if you're a big shot, because there's so much oil, they've all been to Africa because there's a lot of oil in Africa. They've all been to Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. And they've all been to Russia. And I go, because I remember this one guy goes, I'm going to Moscow for 6 months. I'm like, that's got to suck. He goes, what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, like, it's like, dreary and cold. He goes, let me put it this way. He goes, Moscow is 100 times more advanced than Toronto, because Toronto's a dump, man. He goes, Russia, like Moscow, Russia. He goes, it's nicer than New York City. I go, are you serious? He goes, they got everything. It's like, it's high tech, right? Just everything's better. But the way the media portrays Russia, they got old technology. Everybody's house is about to fall over. They have to wait in line to get a loaf of bread. That's the way the media has always portrayed Russia. But anyways.
That's right. And the reason for that is it's very simple. You live in a NATO state. Right?
Yeah.
So NATO has been created, I think it was 1947, I believe, after World War II. And if you look at the main goal of NATO, there's only one reason for NATO. Literally one the NATO is created against Soviet Union or Russia.
Yeah.
Right. There's no other reason. Not North Korea, not Iran, nothing. It's just Russia. So whatever you hear.
But why? But I don't understand though. Why is there? And like you're saying, this has been going on a long time. Why is there this kind of animosity towards Russia in particular? Like, why not China? Why not India? Why not? Because these are big countries. Why is it like they've always had this hate on for Russia? Like, what do you think it is?
The reason is because, of course, power and resources.
Yeah.
If you have American dollar as a world currency, and the only one that declines it is Stalin, then that is the devil in your news.
Yeah, you can't.
He's the only one that said he's not gonna use American dollar in Soviet Union. They have their own money, ruble, and that's why he's demonized everywhere. Even, in fact, I'll tell you that when Soviet Union collapsed, they created history books that demonized Stalin, even to Russian students. Even now, you would think that all he did every day was just kill Russians.
Yeah, that's all they say.
From the moment he woke up. But how then did he develop?
Somebody even said he killed his own son or something, or somebody had his son and he was supposed to pay a ransom and he said, nah, let him die, or something like that. Like they always portrayed him as,
Yeah, so there's always demonizing of people who are against the regime. Now, if you look, let's say, forward in history, another 50 years, they're gonna do exactly the same thing with Putin. They're gonna They're gonna say he was eating babies and dropping nuclear bombs on pregnant women, and but literally, if you think that Putin is going through Ukraine and is creating total annihilation, then he would have just used middle-range missiles.
Yeah.
He doesn't need to go.
Well, this is the thing. CNN saying, "Oh, he just blew up a school with children." Like who? Like just think. Like use your head. If you're going to take over a country, are you going to go after military personnel, or you're going to go after like 4 or 5 year old kids. Like, it doesn't even make sense that your number one target would be kids. No, nobody, like, it just doesn't make sense, right?
No, and a lot of times people who are saying these things, and social media is bad for that because it's a lot of teenagers, right?
Yeah.
They don't understand how things work in the times of war. If you are a military division and there's an enemy, you will hide in any place, including schools. And then if that school is being bombed by your enemy, and if you have a camera across from that school, you're gonna say that they bombed the school, which is not a lie.
But it was because military was hiding there.
That's right. So if you look at Syria and there's not a single building that stands in good shape, it's all bombed. It's because fighting was everywhere, right? You got to understand things in Ukraine too. So the president of Ukraine is not exactly 100% in power of everyone. It's been torn apart by several forces. One of the forces is NATO. Mm-hmm. The president.
So do you think he's just a puppet? Like, is he a NATO puppet?
Well, of course. I mean, he's not. He doesn't have a political background. He was a stand-up comedian in Russia for like most of his life, right? So he says whatever they tell him to say, right? But the other force is actually, like Putin says, it's true. And if you can watch CBC, BBC, whatever news, you will find that actually there's a lot of Nazis in Ukraine that are also.
Like, what do you mean by Nazis? Like.
Okay, so to understand Nazis, we cannot just say that this is people that hate the Jews, right?
Oh, okay.
This is in Germany, Nazi, that's how it was. In Ukrainian Nazi, that would be Ukrainians
who want to revive the Ukrainian nation,
ultra-nationalist Ukrainians that think that their nation is better than other nations.
Okay.
In fact,
isn't that basically everybody? Like, every country thinks they're better than everybody else.
No, but when you say ultra-nationalist, that also implies violence.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, including murder, things like murder. Now, people say, no, but Ukrainian president is Jewish. But the fact of the matter is that he's not fully in charge. He's actually afraid of a lot of these Nazis, right? They're literally saying that they don't like the fact that there's a lot of Jewish business in there. They run around with weapons training people. I know a person who is here. Canada accepts all of these guys. As long as they come here, they say they're refugees. They're here. I was talking to a guy who said that he would do absolutely anything, including blowing up people's houses, if he was told to do so by his charismatic leaders back over there in Ukraine. This is truth. This is not Putin's propaganda.
Yeah.
Right? It's been there for a while. It's just been released in 2014 when the government was overthrown. It was free for all. Anybody who wanted to grab power grabbed the power. Right? There's these special forces that Ukraine had. It was called Berkut.
Oh, okay.
Now they've been blamed for killing citizens during the 2014 revolution. And so they were ousted out of the country. Now you're losing a police force. It means there's more crime on the streets.
Oh, yeah. And well, you saw that when the Soviet system collapsed, was that they had no more money for police and stuff. And that's when the oligarchs, because it was a free-for-all.
That's right. Russian mafia.
Yeah, that's when they got huge. Guys. Yeah. There's nobody keeping tabs on them.
All those guys. Now, the thing about this conflict is that it extends actually a lot further. This is more of, this is not just Russia versus 39 or however NATO states are in there.
Yeah.
And this is mind-boggling. This is one country. There's 39 of them, right? Against it. And they cannot do anything. They do sanctions and they drop these monetary nuclear bombs, but they can't just say that we're going to drop forces in Ukraine and stand shoulder to shoulder like our prime minister said he would do. He's not doing it.
No.
Right? And the other side of the conflict is actually China. And it was surprising to me to see how hostile the United States became to China in the times of Donald Trump. Because before that, I thought that this was their closest trading ally. And all of a sudden, China, human rights. But what, they didn't have problems before?
Yeah.
They always.
Yeah, it's always been that way.
You claim that China is communist, but you deal with them, and then all of a sudden, all of a sudden you blame them because they're communists, but for the last 50 years
You knew that. Well, it's not like it happened overnight. Yeah.
And I think the reason is actually that China is buying less of American securities.
Yeah, probably.
And bonds. So it's affecting the American dollar. Now, who's buying the American securities right now? It's their Federal Reserve, but it's got nothing to back it up with. That's why the hyperinflation. That's why at home things are terrible. Canadian economy is in almost a recession state. We have GDP of 2 trillion and debt of 8 trillion because of this pandemic.
But it's not because of, you know what I mean? It was like, I'm saying that's the excuse they're using.
It's another
I'm
reason.
saying, I was watching, like I'm watching economists all the time. And again, I don't want to name names or whatever, but it's one economist I was watching. He was saying any economy that is driven purely by real estate, that's a sick economy. Because that, like, your economy should be driven by, number one, innovation and technology.
Production.
Yeah, production and innovation and technology. But when you have to rely solely on real estate, that is when you know it's at an end. So it's one of those like chicken and the egg thing. The reason why real estate's going up is because the Federal Reserve is printing so much money. They're saying we got to keep the economy going. So housing prices have to go up. So we have to keep printing more money. You know what I mean? It just keeps going. That's why they're pumping all that money into the economy. Now, to all the like Bitcoin enthusiasts will say, well, Bitcoin's going to solve it. But like Anton was saying, we've seen that one of the major, supposed benefits of Bitcoin was supposed to be this you're supposed to be anonymous. That's not happening. So I don't think the cryptos are going to save the day. Like, I love cryptos. I like the idea of them.
Yeah.
But the proof is in the pudding. I don't think it's going to do it.
I actually have a theory, and I don't know how people are going to take this, but I think that Bitcoin was actually created by the United States government to replace an asset class of gold.
Yeah, because they don't have any.
Well,
or they're losing it. Yeah,
it's also means of creating this one product and asset that doesn't have to be moved around.
Yeah, it's a smarter thing.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then something went wrong. United States faced the fact that China is now completely banned. Now,
so you think they wanted to make it to be kind of under the radar that it's not really American? Is that, you know what I mean?
That's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah. Because now we see how American it is. Now that everybody's wallets are being frozen. Yeah. Now that there's surveillance on every wallet everywhere. And Canada showed it perfectly with the Freedom Convoy. We know that there's no censorship anymore. Yeah. There's a new regulation coming out that Joe Biden just signed, right? And the Emergencies Act in Canada, that's the next level shit. I mean,
well, that's what I'm saying.
Privacy, say goodbye to your privacy.
No, but that's the whole thing is people don't understand like how Trudeau was like totally going against the Constitution and nobody's saying anything. Well, I guess there's people saying anything, but I mean like people always talk about, oh, there's these like corrupt governments. That dude is just as bad as anybody. Like you can't just because you don't like somebody basically put the whole country under martial law. Because you know what I mean? You didn't like something. That is called a tyrant. You're not supposed, he did not follow the Constitution one bit. And because, he's a nice guy and blah, blah, blah.
He's got nice hair.
Yeah. He's so lovely and all that. But the guy, the way he's running it, you want to talk about a dictator? There you go. That's what it is.
Yeah, I think the other important thing to see right now in this Ukrainian conflict is how many countries actually support the United States against Russia. Now, United States is telling everyone to go against it. And if they don't, then there will be sanctions and consequences.
Yeah.
They're even pressuring China. But everyone seems to be holding back. Now, what is the reason for that? I think the reason is that when Russia collapsed in the 90s, there was only one
that's true.
Police left out there.
It was the States.
And that was it. No choice but to do what they tell you. Yep. Otherwise, if you don't, what happens in the Middle East? And they had war in Europe too. Serbia was bombed, carpet bombed, in fact, right? If you say anything against them, you're bombed. You're done. Now, the world is watching that there might be an option And if Russia survives,
No, that's what I'm saying. That's what I was saying, is that I think what this whole thing is that they're seeing the states deteriorate. And they're basically just trying to, it's like, okay, I'm calling you out. It's like a guy, say a guy bullies you your whole life. And then you're like, okay, I'm out in the parking lot. Let's see what you got. Can you back up what you're saying? And that's what I think Russia, and he's probably got, not that they're good friends. It's more of a relationship of convenience. They got probably China behind them. Not
China is 100% behind them.
That's what I'm saying. And it's not so much that they love each other. It's just like you said, look, man, we can create our own block. That's going to control the world. Now you can be on this side or you can be on that side, and they're sizing each other up. They know, they're not dumb, right? And so you got the states who's trying to, you notice whenever they go into something, they try to bring everybody else in on it. Because it's almost like, okay, whose side are you on? Are you on this side or that side? Right? So they're trying to get their teams lined up, so to speak. But what it looks like to me, whoever wins this conflict, that's who's going to be the new superpower. Or it could still be the states, but I'm just saying. But like you said, this has been a long time where there's only been, it's called like a unipower. It's usually like like there's superpowers. Like Soviet Union used to be, it was like a duopoly. There were two. Not anymore. There's just one. It's the states, but we might see an opposing one from all this. And again, I'm not so much saying that they're all buddies, like they might hate each other, but you're going to probably see China. And I know, India isn't a superpower, but they got huge population. They got a huge economic capacity.
Potential for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They will be one of the greats.
Yeah, they will be. And this is what I'm saying. And another one people are not talking about is Africa. Like I've seen so many projections that over the next 50 years, the biggest population explosion in the world is going to be Africa. It's going to be like bigger than anybody. Right now, I don't think any of the top 10 cities in the world are African. Within 50 years, I think they said 30 to 40% of the biggest cities in the world are going to be in Africa.
If you look at statistics in terms of population growth, the best case scenario, like the best example benchmark is Pakistan.
Yeah.
Average population over there, I think it's 23 years old. That's very young.
Yeah.
Average age of population.
Demographics,
yeah. Now, but what I'm saying is here, now all these countries, they're seeing a potential option to the United States power.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. So they're taking their sides.
Now, how do we know that this is true? Look at Mexico, Brazil, Colombia, even Saudi Arabia, all those guys that are normally siding with the United States, and Mexico borders the United States. They're not doing anything. They're not siding with states against Russia because Russia might actually make it. If Russia survives this conflict, and I mean, it's very hard. This is like nuclear bombs are being dropped on its population, right? If they survive, then the world will see a second option and then a third, because China's probably going to offer one as well. Now, is it good or bad? I think it's actually good to have multiple options.
Yeah.
If you are
just look at Mexico, for example, is that like with Mexico, they didn't really benefit from the state's growth. Like they have, but not like Canada and the United States did. Like they're still basically a third world country, So they brought in all this production, they did all this stuff, but their economy never really was ever on par with the rest of North America. So they might say, you know what, we've been with you for X amount of years. Mm-hmm. Let's try Russia. Russia might say, you know what? And again, like you're saying, it's like if you go buy a house, would you rather only one house on the block or 100 houses on the block for sale? Because if everybody's selling and you're buying, they're going to, okay, we'll throw in a hot tub. We'll throw this. We want your money. Yeah. So Mexico, they didn't have any option. They were at the States. Yeah, you guys are going to be like the asshole of North America. That's your choice. What the fuck, right? I think they should have developed Mexico way further than what they did. Like they have the climate. You could have made that like an amazing tropical paradise. But what did they do? They didn't do anything with it. So Russia might come in and say, you know what? We might develop Mexico. We'll make it like summer homes for rich Russian people. People move there, yada, yada, yada. And your economy will grow because of it. And we're going to bring factories there and do this. The Mexicans might say, fuck, what did the States do for us? Nothing.
And I think it's actually good to have options. United States has a lot to offer. You cannot say that one country is evil or
No,
bad.
no.
If Russia,
No.
United States, they're confronting each other, but I don't think either one of them is ultimately evil or bad. Even their leaders.
No.
You know what I mean? United States has a lot to offer. Russia has a lot to offer that a lot of people here don't know about.
Yeah, yeah.
China has some other things to offer as well. We think that they're just a regime that people only live there to work.
Yeah.
But you know what? They have a strong society, like strong social obligations toward each other, and I think the world needs options. Even for me, where do I want to live? Do I want to live in Russia? Then I get this.
Yeah.
Do I want to live in
Yeah,
States?
and
Then I
whatever
get that.
suits you, that's what you do.
I don't want to be killed in either one of those countries
No.
because they're fighting each other over who's number one.
Yeah, who cares?
There
Yeah.
shouldn't be number
No.
one. There should be
Options,
1,
yeah.
2, 3 options,
Yeah.
5 options,
No, but
whatever.
it's like anything in society, right? Is it better when you just have one choice of car or when you have 10? Because then competition kicks in and they give you more options on your car. But I don't know. Me personally, I'm not hating on the States. Don't get me wrong. I love the States and I'm not hating on them, but I'm just saying I think with Mexico in particular, they could have made a way better go of it than what they did. They could have turned that into an amazing thing. And I don't know all the details on it, but Mexico was kind of left behind, you know?
I think United States just lost track in general. When you look at all of those countries where they went in the last 20 years, 30 years, they haven't really brought anything good.
No.
And the leadership somehow, somewhere lost track of, the good American intention.
Yeah.
And I think they got to get it back somehow. Unfortunately, the way I see it right now is they probably going to have to go through a depression and maybe a monetary. The country has to change. Something's got to change in it. And it looks like it's probably going to collapse. Now, the reason I'm saying this, and I'm not an expert, but I've seen this in Soviet Union.
Because you were there, just so the listeners know, you were there when it collapsed.
That's right. And in the 80s, we've seen exactly the same things happening in Russia that is happening here in States right now. We've seen pragmatic leaders that refused to change.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union had to modify. Economy had to change.
Yeah,
they had to keep up with the times.
So there you go. Like them collapsing actually helped them because they would have just been going the same Soviet way, right? But like I said, from a world history point of view, from the 90s till now is not a really long time. And Russia has done so much within the last 30 years. Like it is incredible what they've done since the collapse, right?
Well, they've lost 15 countries, separated into 15 different countries, right? What I'm saying is what we're seeing here in States is that similar things are happening. Economy is on its edge, right? You're seeing conflicts inside states. Look, for example, at BLM, what's happening there. It doesn't matter what kind of situation preceded this. It's a conflict inside states that is, there's fire, there's people being killed. It's almost civil war. Yeah. This is what happened in Russia in the 90s. Civil wars against provinces.
Yeah, certain groups against other groups and whatever.
The United States is repeating the pattern.
Yeah.
They need to avoid that. Unfortunately, I think that government became so big and so obsessed with fighting some kind of external enemy, no matter who it is. It could be Russians. It could be even obsession with environment.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's not 100% accurate, whatever they claim.
No.
It's not like people go around and pollute everywhere, you know, this carbon thing. Humans are made of carbon.
Yeah.
You know that?
Well,
trees need carbon.
You exhale carbon.
And we listen to little girls.
Yeah.
To make our decisions.
Yeah.
Canada is pretty much number one in terms of environmental accountability.
Yeah, and China's last.
And then Greta Thunberg shows up, and we're bowing to her as if she's the god of the environment. She knows how to fix our problems. We lead the world. There's no one better. Almost no one better.
No.
Don't tell us what to do. Take our example.
Yeah.
Things take time. Listen, kids need to understand that to develop a new next level technology takes scientists, takes work, takes production, takes research. It takes a decade, sometimes 2 decades.
Oh, it takes a long time.
You know what I mean?
But the thing is, I don't know if you've ever seen that guy, Yuri Brezhnev.
No.
Oh, he was Russian KGB and he defected to Canada. And I remember him talking. He said this in like 1993. He's dead now, but you can look him up on YouTube. His name's Yuri Brezhnev. And what he said was he was part of KGB and so on and so forth. And he goes, I'll tell you how, like he said, there's so many war, like, you know how you're saying we're in a war right now, but most people don't know it. He goes, there's wars going on all the time between, at the time, Soviet Union and United States or whatever.
Yep.
And he said, what they would do, the Russians would do, was they'd own publishing houses, right? In New York City, they'd buy a publishing house. I'm not going to name names. I don't know which one it was, but they would buy a huge publishing, like reputable publishing house. And he said what they would do is, the way you get tenure as a university professor is you got to be published. Okay. So he said, he goes, I know this for a fact. He was part of it. And it's not propaganda. It's not tinfoil hat made up bullshit. It's the truth. He said what they would do is they find the biggest idiot that they could find, university professor, like some guy who came up with some idiotic theory, totally way off, off the handle, and they'd publish his work. So he'd become a tenured professor in a university. So that idiot would start teaching kids nonsense. Like you're saying, how does this, how did we lose our way? The university system was pumped on purpose with moron professors who fed all this fake, stuff that was like, look at all this. People don't even know if they're a boy or a girl. Like this is how far it's gone. Like it went from, they were teaching stuff like mathematics and, economics to, am I really a guy or a girl? I'm not sure. Let's write a paper about it. This is how idiotic it's gotten. And that was by design.
But you see, so if you have people that believe in this stuff and this is what they want, maybe there should be an option. And if the United States wants to house people that...
Well, it was more like, it wasn't like the state's story. It's not like the states wanted this. It was like through osmosis. Like this was like a Soviet masterminded thing. You know what I mean? And again, if people say, "Oh, I don't believe that theory," watch what he has to say. You can look him up. His name's Yuri Brezhnev. And he even said, he goes, the other thing about, and this is amazing what he said, because you got to remember, he said this in 1993. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is a long time ago. This is almost 30 years ago, way before, how like meditation, like I remember they were saying when, what was his name? Our premier in Ontario, before Wynn, that liberal guy, I can't remember what his name is off the top of my head. He was trying to get meditation coaches to go to schools to teach kids how to meditate. And they're going to have a part of the day segregated for meditation because he said it was so important. I can't remember that premier's name off the top of my head. But anyways, I remember him pushing that. And that Yuri Brezhnev said when he was in the KGB, they sent him to India. And I'm thinking, I never understood, like I can see geographically why, how, India is very close to Russia, but why would KGB want to go to Russia? I mean, go to India? Like what? Like I've never heard them have conflict or whatever. And you know what his reason for going there was to study how Indian people were easily controlled. He said you had like how many hundreds of millions controlled by 100,000 British troops. So they wanted to figure out how the hell did they control them? Like, how do you control all these people? Right. And what they found out was meditation. And he's like, what does this have to do with controlling people? He goes, if you convince somebody that by sitting there doing nothing, just thinking nothing, literally thinking about nothing is what the most important aspect of your life, you'll never be productive. You'll never be any sort of a threat to a power because you're docile. He said they basically made these people mindless. He goes, have you ever heard of a country saying, okay, let's get our kids into hardcore physics, hardcore, mathematics, computer science. Let's really push this. No, because those kids become dangerous. If there's all kinds of people, if you ever notice, like certain disciplines like engineering, they like to control who gets that information. They don't like, you don't really want you to learn how to make a gun. You know what I mean? Governments don't want you to know how to make your own tank. They don't want you to know how to do that shit. What they want you to do is sit in a room, think about nothing, because you're easy to control. And he said that was his main purpose for going to India, was they wanted to figure out how to make people docile so they could implement that in the United States. And that's exactly what is going on. And again, it sounds crazy, but this guy said this 30 years ago. He's on YouTube talking about it. This isn't coming from me. This is coming from him.
Well, there's multiple ways of making people do what you want.
Yeah.
And for example, war, like it's happening right now, is one of them. This is when you walk up to a person and you tell them what to do. Otherwise, you punch them in the face.
Yeah, that's right? The most overt way of doing it.
So that's one way. There's multiple ways, believe me. Like, for example...
No, but I'm talking about his is like under the radar, completely covert.
Oh, there's a lot of them under the radar. One of them is religion, for example, because it doesn't have a border, right? Think about it.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that the Catholic Church was the first United Nations. Essentially, they were trying to control the world through religion. Like, they didn't have to subject themselves to any borders. That's why they would think about this. They were in the Philippines like 500 years ago, 400 years ago. Like, that is a hell of an effort. Like, Filipinos are mostly Catholics, you know?
That's right, yeah.
You know what I mean? So you think about the effort that they put into going all the way there. You know how hard that would have been back then? Like, so it wasn't a fluke, you know? Like
Nothing's a fluke. And the one thing we got to be careful with is how a lot of these people that we listen to on social media, how they come up with decisions, with conclusions, what they would have done if they were a politician. Well, the fact of the matter is, to be a politician, it's complicated. You got to study political science. And can you answer a question? How to lead a nation of millions of people and how to convince them to do what you want them to do.
Yeah.
It's not that easy as
it's
people
not.
think. And decision making is very hard. And there are forces that are affecting your decisions, and you got to play along. You got to play with all sides, sort of thing, right? Look at Doug Ford. Did he want to cancel mandates before? He probably did.
Yeah.
You know, but he couldn't.
No.
He said it was a political suicide if he did.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about global decision making, that's even harder.
Yeah.
Right? If you're a small country and you owe money to International Monetary Fund or World Bank, you're done.
Oh, you're done.
They control you.
They control you. And this is what I'm saying. And like, there was this, like, you know, when people say like, oh, the, you know, shadow government, the deep state, people say, oh, that's all made up. It's not. And again, this is the best book that exemplifies that I've ever read is by Edward Bernays, and it's called Propaganda. Just read that book, Edward Bernays' Propaganda, and it totally makes sense. Like, right in the start of the book, he talks about the deep state. And you got to remember, this book is written almost 100 years ago. I never heard of that term till like when Trump started coming out, you know, deep state, shadow government and all that. You know, guys like Alex Jones would talk about stuff like that. But he talked about this close to 100 years ago. And all he says, and it totally makes sense. You got to look at, you know, when people, they'll be 100% convinced, oh, there's no such thing as shadow government, no such thing as deep state. That's all a myth, yada, yada. Okay. Define what the shadow government is. All a shadow government is someone who makes a decision, like who's a decision-making body that's non-elected. Okay. Now ask yourself this. When was the last time you voted for United Nations? I never voted for the United Nations. Have you? I haven't. They seem to be controlling stuff. Did you ever vote for anybody in NATO? I never did. But they seem to be controlling things. Is that not the definition of a shadow government? Is somebody who's controlling things that's non-elected?
You know, it's actually,
did you vote for anybody in the IMF?
No, but you don't have to. The thing is, it's a lot more simple than that. So, for example, if people only want to blame Putin for everything that's happening somewhere in the world, or they want to blame Biden or Trump for whatever's happening in the world, you got to understand these people are on the front line. They're a one person who says things on behalf of whatever the decision that was made. There's a team of people that are analyzing.
That's what I'm saying. There's a whole whack of people that have interests.
There's a team of people, and every country has an organization or a structure within the government that's sole purpose. It's actually its job for the purpose of defending your country. You have to analyze millions of data entries, all kinds of information, to come up with decisions, right? Now, you're gonna. Some people may ask, well, we don't know their names, but you don't have to.
No, you don't have to.
These are These are analysts. These people are just doing their job, and whoever is the president is the one who speaks.
Oh yeah, he's just the one relaying the message.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean,
he didn't think it up.
I mean, some of the presidents are more involved than the others.
Yeah.
Like, I think Donald Trump had he had pretty good idea of what was happening in his country, and that's why a lot of times he just spoke out. Maybe he shouldn't have spoken out, because some of this stuff he reveals maybe a little too much about the intentions of his government. But you can clearly tell that he's a little more involved.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But other than that, his job is minimal.
It is, yeah.
And he doesn't have to answer for every decision that's made in the United States.
No, but the thing is too, like, if you get back to that Edward Bernays book, Propaganda, and again, I was talking about NATO and World Bank and all that, but he said it totally makes sense that the shadow government exists. Okay. And he just used an example, like, say for instance, like you have like an electricians union. Okay. Like say you have the biggest electrician union in the United States. I don't know if it's called the Electricians of America, but it would be something along those lines, right? Now think about that. If you're the president of an electrician union, and again, not all these people who control things, it's not sinister. It's not like they're up to something, but there's a lot of people who have a lot of power that are unelected. So again, let's say you're the president of the American Electrician Union. Okay. Now your own union members may have elected you, but the general public hasn't elected you. But let's just say, for instance, there was a particular piece of equipment that electricians were using that was causing injury or causing death or something like that. And he said, okay, I'm going to make it a policy that no electricians that are part of this union are allowed to use that piece of equipment anymore. It could be for the benefit of it could be for the good. It doesn't mean it's something bad. But my point is, he could make a decision that could affect the whole country without it ever going through government. You know what I mean?
Right, that's right.
That's what I'm saying, is that, so when people say there's no such thing as a shadow government, yeah, there are. There's all kind, and again, I'm not saying it's sinister. I'm not saying it's evil, but I'm saying there's people who make a lot of decisions in this world that affect, because like I said, if there was a particular component that these electricians were using that they said they're not going to use anymore, that factory that makes it might go out of business. So that could change the whole economy for that one local thing. And if they switch to something else might boom because of that one decision. Think about that. If you're making components for 300 million people, it's going to affect certain businesses, right? And that's what I'm saying. And then there's also stuff like there's people that are part of like, like say, like on a food, food workers union or something like that. And again, it's not that it's they're up to something or they're trying to make money or anything like that. There's certain people that can make key decisions in any country that are non-elected. So when people say, oh, there's no such thing as a shadow government, by definition, that is just not true. You can prove it. You can see it every day, right?
Well, yeah, things are actually, if we simplify this and it all makes sense, let's say you're the president of the country. What do you have? You have citizens, you have factories, you have military, you have politicians, whatever, right? Now, let's say you got Amazon and they employ 1 million people.
Yeah.
Is it smart to consult Amazon on some of your policies? I think it is.
It is, because by virtue, like I said, right. Amazon itself is a shadow government because it controls so much of our society now.
Right, but it only makes sense to partner up with these people who are, well, I guess Jeff Bezos would be considered an American oligarch, right?
Yeah, you'd have to be.
So is he bad or is it good or bad? No, he's just the guy that has a lot of stake in your country. You consult with him. He's one of the guys that can help you make decisions.
Yeah, but by osmosis has become has become an integral part of society. You have to talk to a guy like that.
That's right. And they help you make a decision that is good for your country.
Exactly. And I don't think that they're out like to screw anyone. Like you're saying, like if, say, for instance, you were, like you're saying, the president of the United States, and you were going to do something, and you got a call from Bezos saying, Mr. President, I know you're trying to pass this particular policy. There might be something you don't understand. If you pass this is going to affect Amazon in this way. And if it's negative, people make mistakes. You might say, I never thought about that. If
Well, of course.
If we do this, yeah, it's going to, like you said, it's going to affect 1 million employees.
That's right.
We're going to backtrack. We're not going to do it. And then people say, oh, did you hear that? So-and-so, now he's bowing to Bezos. It's not so much that he's bowing to Bezos. It's just because they may have wanted to implement something without taking everything into account. And once they found out how negative it is, they backed off. That's the way, like, I'm not one of those like tinfoil hat
No,
guys that thinks everything's a big scam. But I'm saying, but if you think that one guy runs the country, no.
No, of course not. And what we got to remember is particularly the United States, it's so big that all these conflicts that are happening right now are the end result of their inability to scale down and share a little bit of world wealth. They're not happy with what they have inside states. They are happy with what they have from the moment of collapse of Soviet Union, which is the whole planet.
Yeah.
Now, if somebody says, let's scale, we have our part, you have your part, and China has their part, they can't, because by definition, capitalism has to grow.
Yeah, that's true. Right? I think that is a flaw with capitalism. But
if they can't modify their model right now, the capitalistic model,
that's why I think they're getting into cryptos.
That's right.
Like with all that, like Decentraland, like all that metaverse, because I honestly think what that is, they figured out the whole finite element of the actual world they can't do anymore. So now they got to make this virtual world. That's what I think. I honestly think that's what it is.
And I agree with you. But I think they didn't account for the fact that some countries might ban it.
Yeah.
And they're only banning the American versions of that stuff.
Oh, they'll do their own.
So that's the conflict. And it's a world conflict between major powers, not just US and Russia, some other ones as well. And China, we already know, has developed its own virtual land where they're going to do business. And you can make 1 million of these lands.
Oh, yeah.
You can make 1 million.
That's what I'm saying. So it doesn't matter. This is what I'm saying, is that it doesn't matter if Russia bans you, China bans you, because within your own metaverse, it's unlimited. There's multiple forms of infinity, and all they have to do is control one of them or a few of them.
Correct. But let's say you create a metaverse within Facebook, Meta, and how many billions of people are in it? I don't know, maybe like 5 billion, 6 billion, whatever, right? If you put money in it called Diem, the stable coin that Facebook was developing, backed up by virtual gold called Bitcoin, that is primarily owned by the United States. In fact, probably Michael Saylor owns most of it, right? Now you have control over the virtual countries now, because everybody's going to be using one virtual land.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how many social networks do we have? Maybe 5 major ones. All of them are from the United States.
They're that we use, but
that's right.
But China's got
their own.
Yeah.
Now let's say you develop the same thing, but virtual. Now you have control over people's jobs as well, because virtual real estate, virtual cryptocurrencies imply virtual jobs. You can already get hired as a casino manager in Decentraland.
Oh, can you? I didn't know that.
You can do concerts, you can do podcasts, whatever. You can buy a house beside Snoop Dogg for $500,000, right? Now, if you're the manager of this space, like Facebook, Meta, then you're in charge of it. And if China says that they don't want it, then you lost that portion of the business, right? So that's where capitalism is facing limitations.
No, but I'm saying with the metaverse, it can keep going there.
If the population grows.
No, but I'm saying, like, if you maybe you're like, we're not thinking about the same thing, but what I'm talking about is, like, if I become the Donald Trump of a metaverse sort of thing, and I buy, New York, and I buy this, and I buy all these skyscrapers and all this sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
There might be 1,000 guys like me who are trying to do the same thing. So we're all billionaires in this make-believe world, but then somebody might go to another make-believe world and they become something, you know what I mean? So all this growth and all this can happen unlimited. You know what I mean?
No, so it can't. It's limited by exactly the same principles that we have in real world. which is like, let's say, limited amounts of gold, limited amounts of capital in production. If you have too much unlimited growth, then you're facing hyperinflation. You have to have some sort of backup, right? So if you have too many virtual realities, then none of them is worth anything.
Yeah.
Most likely it's going to be concentrated within a few of them. And Meta, Decentraland are probably the first ones out there and the most well-funded, so they would be probably the biggest ones, right? But
I'm glad I own a lot of them.
It all depends on the amount of users that you're
They're saying,
have.
actually, this is a little bit off topic, but they're saying Shiba's going to get into all that eventually.
Yeah, Shiba is building its own metaverse. But the thing is, you can have, we're going to have metaverse in every corporation.
Yeah.
For example, BMW built their metaverse to test their cars.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Right,
and NVIDIA, the company that makes video cards, builds an omniverse that is a bridge between metaverses. So you can
really?
use tools from one metaverse
and bring them over to another one.
That's right, and that is groundbreaking.
Oh yeah.
So this way, multiple different metaverses can interact with each other. You can switch from one to another. But then again, you're going to be where most people are. You're not going to create your own metaverse and just be there by yourself. It's like living on an island.
No, but I'm saying, but there's enough people in the world that if each one has 100,000 people, like you could have like a metaverse where all these 100,000 people live like kings. You know what I mean? And then as soon as it kind of isn't as opportunistic anymore, somebody can build another one. You know, that's all I'm saying.
Well, to live like king, you got to have somebody buy your stuff.
Yeah.
So if there's 100,000 people, but they're all poor.
No, but I'm saying, if you're all getting rich, right? Like if you're using this virtual currency that's unique to that particular thing and you all have millions of dollars, you know what I mean?
I think there's only so many people that can be rich, just like in real life. There's the principles of money, they don't change.
Yeah.
I believe that even in virtual real world, some people are going to get rich right now. And then the rest are just going to be their followers sort of thing. They're going to be regular folks like me and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyways, interesting conversation.
Yeah, no, but this is what I wanted. I've been asking you to do this for a while, to do a little podcast. But anyways, we're going to end this with this outro song. You know what they're saying?
Yeah, this is an old anthem, actually.
Yeah, Soviet,
Yeah. The music's remained the same. The words have changed now with the Russian anthem.
Russia still uses the music?
It's the same music. It's just the words have changed.
Yeah, because that's from the Soviet Union. But anyways, that was just a joke. But anyways, no, again, I'd like for Anton to come back. I don't know if he is, but I do want, like, this was more of a Russian-centric sort of a thing, but we want to eventually do it more about cryptos. You know,
Cryptos, sure.
Yeah, the cryptos. But this was like a kind of just because of what's going on right now, about, maybe shed a little bit of light on what's going on with Russia. Because again, I learned a lot from this, and I think a lot of people are kind of in the dark of what's going on, and this helped a bit. So,
well, a lot of things are connected. That's what we got to learn to see when we watch the news. The whole world is connected.
Yeah.
Globalization has been and gone, and it's here, and every event has reflection somewhere else. It's not just the one thing you see in the news.
Okay,
right?
well,
So even the cryptocurrencies are somehow connected to all of this.
Oh, yeah, I didn't touch on this, though, because apparently Cardano is supposed to be very African-centric. And like I was saying, the reason I have some Cardano, the reason why I think Cardano has a good future is just because Africa's demographics are looking really favorable. So that's, and I'm not telling, this isn't financial advice, but I'm just saying, to me, I can see Cardano being a player down the road. I don't know if you're into that particular currency, but
I own Cardano, but as soon as it goes to all-time high, I'm going to dump it.
I'm doing it too, and I'm going to be putting mine into Ethereum. So I've I got basically not all of them, but I got quite a few of them. But I'm going to be moving towards Ethereum, Bitcoin, and Shiba. So Shiba is more of my dark horse.
Yeah. But maybe I shouldn't say it here today because we've been talking about something else. But I believe that the dark horse is actually Algorand.
Really? Well, yeah, you've been talking about that for a long time. But isn't that Ukrainian? Or where is it?
No, Algorand is developed by MIT.
Yeah.
Everything United States has in terms of money, new technology developed in terms of monetary policies, is MIT.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which is interesting because Donald Trump's uncle was a professor at MIT, and he was the guy that confiscated all of Nikola Tesla's equipment when he died. A lot of people don't know that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Anyways, Neil, thanks.
All right, Anton, I'm so happy. Yeah, I'm glad he came down here. Took time out of his day to do this. And again, hopefully we'll do it again. Okay, so that's it for today.